Welcome back to the Quarterly Call. All content is for informational purposes and is not investment advice. Please consult with an investment professional. Today, we're going to be looking at DoorDash.
Okay.
We're going to be looking at their Q4 2024 earnings call and shareholder letter.
Cool.
And I think you're going to find this really interesting.
Yeah.
So, what really stood out to me is that DoorDash, they have some pretty impressive numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, they already have 100 million active shoppers,
Right.
making 7 million orders every day.
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
But they're saying that they're just getting started.
Right. And that's what kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
Is that they think that their total addressable market is 800 million people.
It's huge.
Huge.
That's like almost the entire population of Europe.
Yeah.
And so even in their most established segment, which is U.S. restaurants, they see a ton more room to grow.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I thought was so interesting is they're really not just sitting back and enjoying the success that they have now.
Right.
They're actively looking at, okay, how can we bridge that gap? How can we capture that massive potential that we think is still out there?
Yeah.
And, one of the ways they're doing that is through international expansion.
Right.
In some ways, their international growth is outpacing their U.S. growth, especially in the newer segments.
Yeah, I was really impressed by that.
Yeah.
They said that their international monthly active users are at an all-time high.
Mm-hmm.
And then their international subscription program, Wolt plus Fan A, is growing even faster than DashPass did in its early stages.
Wow.
I know, crazy, right?
Yeah.
And then in some international markets, they're actually seeing grocery and new vertical penetration exceeding U.S. levels.
Oh, wild. And what do you think they're doing differently in those markets?
That's a great question. They're clearly doing something right.
Yeah.
It seems like they're tailoring their approach to each region.
Right.
But yeah, it really does make you think.
Yeah.
What can they learn from those international successes and bring back to the U.S.?
Right.
But what I thought was really impressive was their approach to profitability.
Mm-hmm.
They said that they're not chasing specific margin percentages.
Okay.
They're prioritizing profit dollar growth.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So, they're really all about scaling for density and efficiency to drive profit, which clearly seems to be working.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like they're really playing the long game here.
Right.
They're saying that they want to reinvest those profits to fuel even more growth.
Yeah.
And, build a stronger foundation for the future.
And so, where are they focusing these investments?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Are they going to double down on international expansion, or are there other areas that they're prioritizing?
Right.
Well, one area they're definitely focusing on is grocery delivery.
Okay.
It's still a pretty young market,
Yeah.
both in the U.S. and globally, but it has huge potential.
It does, yeah.
It seems like everybody's trying to figure out grocery delivery.
Right. It's like the Wild West out there.
Totally.
Yeah.
So what have been DoorDash's key takeaways so far?
Yeah.
And where are they focusing their efforts to kind of get ahead in this space?
Well, they're really focused on expanding selection and improving accuracy.
Okay.
It's really all about meeting those customer expectations.
Makes sense.
Yeah, because let's be honest.
Yeah.
Nobody wants missing groceries or surprise substitutions.
No.
So they're really focused on that. And then also affordability and making sure that they're matching the right dasher to each grocery order.
Right. It's all about optimizing that delivery ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly.
From start to finish.
Yep.
But here's what I'm curious about.
Mm-hmm.
They already have this incredible logistics network.
Right.
They have cutting-edge technology.
Mm-hmm.
And a massive customer base.
Yep.
So how are they leveraging those existing strengths to really dominate the grocery delivery space?
That is a great question. They've got a solid foundation to build upon there.
Yeah.
And they're not stopping there.
Right.
Their success goes way beyond restaurants.
Okay.
Their U.S. new verticals segment, which includes all sorts of deliveries beyond food, is doing exceptionally well.
Give me some examples.
Yeah.
Like, what are these new verticals that are taking off?
I know, right?
We're talking pet supplies, pharmacy deliveries, dry cleaning. Like, I need details.
Yeah, I know they didn't really get into specifics on the call, but they did emphasize how customer engagement and repeat purchases are increasing in these new categories.
Okay.
So clearly they're finding ways to attract and retain customers even outside of the restaurant scene.
So they're building a diverse ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they've conquered the present, but what about the future?
Right.
Are AI and autonomous vehicles just buzzwords? Or are they really going to be delivering our pizzas in a few years?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Right.
Well, it seems like DoorDash is approaching these emerging technologies pretty strategically.
Okay.
They see the long-term potential, but their current focus is really on mastering the physical world of logistics.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
We're talking about the distinction between autonomous delivery and robotaxis.
Interesting.
Self-driving cars delivering people versus self-driving cars delivering packages.
Okay.
What's the big difference?
Right.
And why does it matter?
Well, robotaxis are really having to figure out what they call the first and last 10 feet problem.
Okay.
Where a passenger needs to be able to get in and out of the vehicle safely on both ends of the trip.
Right.
Which requires a lot of technology. It could be really expensive to implement.
Yeah.
Autonomous delivery vehicles, they're facing kind of a different set of challenges. How do we navigate traffic? How do we find the right drop-off location? How do we handle all sorts of package types?
Yeah, it's fascinating to think about how those challenges might play out differently depending on what's being delivered.
Right, exactly.
But AI goes way beyond self-driving vehicles.
Yeah.
What are they doing with AI on a more practical level?
Right. Well, DoorDash is exploring how AI and something called large language models, or LLMs, can actually enhance their operations.
Okay.
Think personalization.
Okay.
Making their operations more efficient and even improving the Dash Pass experience.
Okay, so paint me a picture. I open the DoorDash app,
Yeah.
and it's like having a personal concierge who knows my favorite restaurants, predicts my cravings,
Right.
suggests new places I might love based on my past orders. Is that the kind of AI magic we're talking about?
I mean, that's definitely within the realm of possibility.
Wow.
And don't forget about, the potential for AI to optimize delivery routes.
Right.
Manage Dasher availability and even create personalized marketing campaigns.
It's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to think about all the possibilities.
So they're crushing it in the present. They've got a solid plan for the future. But what potential challenges could they face down the road?
Yeah.
What could throw a wrench in their plans?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
Well, competition in the delivery space is fierce.
Yeah.
And new players are popping up all the time. And, we can't forget about the regulatory landscape,
Right.
which is constantly changing.
Right.
So DoorDash is really going to need to stay agile and adapt to those shifts to maintain their leadership position.
Speaking of agility, what about the labor market?
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk about the gig economy and worker classification these days.
Right.
How could those trends impact DoorDash's business model?
Yeah, that's a really critical consideration. They've built this huge network of dashers.
Right.
And any changes to labor laws or regulations could really significantly impact their operations and their costs.
Right.
So it's definitely something they'll need to, monitor closely and adapt to as needed.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Yeah.
But one thing's for sure. DoorDash is operating in a dynamic and ever-changing environment.
Right.
And their ability to navigate these challenges is going to be key to their continued success.
Absolutely, yeah. They have a pretty impressive track record of innovation and execution. But, the next chapter of their story is still being written.
Right.
It'll be fascinating to see how they leverage their strengths, how they adapt to these new realities, and ultimately how they shape the future of delivery.
It sounds like they're in a great position.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, as they grow so much,
Yeah.
if all this growth will impact their company culture.
You're right.
As they get bigger, can they maintain that kind of scrappy startup mentality?
Right.
That's really driven their success so far.
I think they're definitely aware of that challenge.
Okay.
That they've mentioned initiatives to maintain open communication, encourage risk-taking, and empower employees at all levels.
It's great that they're thinking about these things.
Yeah.
But as they scale up, they're inevitably going to face more scrutiny.
Right.
How are they addressing concerns about fair competition and ensuring that they're not stifling innovation in the delivery space?
Yeah. I mean, they've had their fair share of scrutiny in the past, and they'll definitely need to continue to be mindful of their impact on the broader ecosystem.
Right.
I think it's about finding that balance
Mhm.
between aggressive growth and responsible business practices.
Speaking of responsibility, they've also highlighted their commitment to social impact initiatives.
Right.
So what are some of the ways that they're giving back to the communities they serve?
Mm-hmm.
Beyond just delivering food,
Right.
what role do they see themselves playing in society?
Well, they've launched several programs to support local restaurants,
Okay.
address food insecurity, and provide opportunities for dashers.
Mhm.
They're also, exploring ways to leverage their platform to promote social good
Okay.
and connect people with causes they care about.
It's encouraging to see them using their platform and their reach to make a positive impact.
Yeah, for sure.
But let's circle back to the competition for a moment.
Okay.
You've got Uber Eats, Grubhub, and a whole host of other players,
Right.
all fighting for a piece of the delivery pie.
Mm-hmm.
So how is DoorDash staying ahead of the pack in such a crowded market?
Well, they're constantly innovating. They're experimenting with new delivery models, and they're expanding their offerings to stand out from the crowd.
Right.
They're also using their data and insights to personalize the customer experience and provide valuable services beyond just delivering food.
It sounds like a constant race to stay ahead,
Yeah.
but they seem to be running with purpose and agility.
Yeah, they are.
What about their long-term vision?
Mm-hmm.
They've mentioned becoming a comprehensive local commerce platform.
Right.
So what does that actually look like in practice?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, imagine a world where you can order groceries, pharmacy items, pet supplies, even clothing and electronics,
Wow.
all through the DoorDash platform.
Okay.
They really want to connect consumers with everything they need in their local communities.
That's a game changer.
Yeah, it is.
But building that kind of ecosystem takes a lot of work, right?
Yeah, for sure.
How are they making sure they have the infrastructure and partnerships in place to support such ambitious growth?
Well, they've been strategically expanding their logistics network,
Mm-hmm.
building partnerships with a wider range of businesses,
Okay.
and investing in their technology platform
Mm-hmm.
to really handle the increasing complexity of their operations.
It seems like they're laying the groundwork for a whole new era of on-demand convenience.
Yeah, for sure.
But let's not forget about the human element.
Right.
As they scale and automate, how are they ensuring they maintain a positive and supportive relationship with their dashers?
Yeah, that's a good question.
After all, those folks are the face of DoorDash for most people.
They are. They've emphasized fair compensation,
Okay.
flexible work opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
and access to resources and support for dashers.
Okay.
They're also creating opportunities for dashers to, share feedback
Okay.
and contribute to shaping the future of the platform.
It's great that they're recognizing that dashers are the backbone of their business, not just cogs in a machine.
Right.
But let's face it,
Yeah,
the delivery landscape is constantly evolving.
it is.
So what potential disruptors are on their radar?
Mm-hmm.
What are they worried about?
Well, new technologies could emerge that, disrupt the entire delivery landscape.
Right.
Consumer preferences could shift in unexpected ways.
Right.
Regulations could change, making it more difficult or costly to operate their business.
Right.
They really have to be prepared for anything.
So they need to be adaptable and ready to pivot.
Yeah.
What are they doing to anticipate these potential disruptions
Mm-hmm.
and ensure that they're positioned for long-term success?
Well, they're focusing on data-driven decision-making,
Okay.
investing heavily in research and development,
Mm-hmm.
and constantly monitoring emerging trends.
Okay.
They're also building a culture that embraces experimentation and is willing to change course when needed.
It's that combination of vision, execution, and willingness to embrace the unknown that makes them such a fascinating company to watch.
It really does. Yeah, I mean, they've come a long way since their early days as just a food delivery startup.
Right.
They're a global force now,
Mm-hmm.
shaping the future of on-demand commerce.
And it all started with a simple idea,
Mm.
connecting people with the best in their cities. Who knew that a late-night craving for pizza could spark such a revolution?
I know, right?
But as they continue to grow and evolve, it's important to ask, what does success actually look like for DoorDash 5 or 10 years down the road?
Yeah.
Are they content with just being a delivery giant? Or are they aiming for something even bigger?
Yeah.
What's the ultimate goal?
Well, it seems like they've made it pretty clear that they have aspirations beyond just delivering things.
Okay.
They want to build a platform that empowers local businesses, strengthens communities, and helps make cities, more livable and vibrant.
So it's not just about convenience.
Right.
It's about creating a positive impact on a larger scale.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm curious how they see technology playing a role in achieving those broader goals.
Yeah, well, they've talked about using their data and technology to address issues like food insecurity,
Yeah.
supporting local entrepreneurs, and promoting sustainable practices.
Okay. It's great that they're thinking about using their tech for good. But as their reach and influence grow, they're inevitably going to face more scrutiny.
Right.
How are they preparing for that increased level of public attention?
Yeah, I think transparency, accountability, and a genuine commitment to ethical practices are going to be absolutely crucial. They'll also need to actively engage with stakeholders,
Okay.
address concerns head on, and consistently demonstrate that they're using their platform responsibly.
It's about walking the walk,
Yeah, exactly.
not just talking the talk.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But enough about the future. Let's bring it back to the present for a moment.
Okay.
What's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with from this look into DoorDash's world? What's the most important thing you think they should understand?
I think for me, it's their relentless focus on innovation and execution. They're not afraid to experiment. They're constantly iterating and improving.
And they're always looking for ways to do things better.
It's that growth mindset that really sets them apart.
Yeah.
They're not content with the status quo.
Yeah.
They're always pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the on-demand economy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it seems like they're doing it with a real sense of purpose.
They are.
Absolutely. They're a company on a mission.
Yeah.
It's going to be fascinating to watch how their journey unfolds.
It is.
It really is.
Right.
But here's a final thought-provoking question for you to consider.
Okay.
If DoorDash truly is the future of local commerce, what role will we as consumers play in shaping that future?
Right.
Will we embrace this new era of on-demand convenience, or will we push back and demand a more balanced approach?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question to think about. It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Food for thought, right?
It is. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Quarterly Call. For more episodes, please remember to rate and follow our show. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.
It's fascinating to think about how DoorDash has gone from like a simple food delivery app to this like massive platform.
Yeah.
With ambitions of like reshaping local commerce.
Right.
But, as they expand into these new areas and become more a part of our daily lives, what does that mean for like the average person?
Yeah.
Are there downsides to all this convenience?
That's a really good point. I think, one thing to consider is the impact on small businesses.
Okay.
Will they be able to compete in this new landscape?
Right.
Or will they get squeezed out by these giants like DoorDash? And then what about, the environmental impact of all these deliveries?
It's definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
DoorDash has talked about sustainability initiatives.
But how do they balance those goals with the, just inherent environmental costs of delivering everything on demand?
Right.
And then, let's not forget about data privacy.
Yeah.
They're collecting a ton of information about our ordering habits, our preferences, even our locations.
Right.
So how are they using that data?
Yeah.
And are they doing enough to protect our privacy?
Those are all really valid concerns. And as DoorDash grows, they're going to need to address these issues transparently and proactively. I mean, they're going to be under a microscope.
Right.
And consumers are going to demand accountability.
Right.
It's not just about delivering things quickly and efficiently anymore. It's about doing it ethically and sustainably as well.
Absolutely. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about their financial performance.
Okay.
They've consistently delivered strong results.
They have.
Quarter after quarter. So what's their secret sauce? What are they doing that others aren't?
I think it's a combination of factors. They've built a highly scalable business model. They're laser focused on operational efficiency.
Okay.
And they're incredibly adaptable to changing market dynamics. But I think one of their biggest strengths is their willingness to invest in innovation.
Okay.
They're not afraid to try new things, to experiment, and to push the boundaries of what's possible.
So they're not resting on their laurels.
No.
They're constantly looking for ways to, like, improve and stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But sustained growth requires more than just innovation, right?
Right.
So what are they doing to make sure that they're building a company that can, like, thrive for years to come?
Well, they're attracting and retaining top talent.
Okay.
They're fostering a culture of collaboration and continuous learning,
Mm-hmm.
and they're building really strong relationships with their partners. They're not just focused on the next quarter or the next year. They're building a company for the long haul.
It's impressive to see a company with such a clear vision
Mm-hmm.
and the ability to execute on it.
Yeah.
But, they're not operating in a vacuum. The world is changing rapidly,
Yeah.
and the on-demand economy is still evolving.
Mm-hmm.
What potential disruptions could, like, derail their plans?
Yeah.
What should they be worried about?
I mean, new technologies could emerge
Mm-hmm.
that disrupt, the entire delivery landscape.
Right.
Consumer preferences could shift in unexpected ways.
Right.
Regulations could change,
Mm-hmm.
making it more difficult or costly to operate their business.
Yeah.
I mean, they need to be prepared for anything.
So how are they staying ahead of the curve? How are they anticipating and adapting to these potential challenges?
Well, they're investing heavily in, data analytics and market research to really understand those emerging trends and consumer behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
They're actively experimenting with new technologies and delivery models,
Okay.
and they're constantly evaluating their operations
Mm-hmm.
to identify any areas for improvement.
It sounds like they're doing everything right.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, like, what do you see as the biggest potential risk to their continued success? What's the one thing that can really, like, trip them up?
I think their biggest risk is complacency.
Okay.
If they start to believe their own hype, if they get too comfortable with their current success,
Right.
they could become vulnerable to new competitors or disruptive technologies.
Right.
So, they need to maintain that hunger, that drive
Mm-hmm.
to constantly innovate and improve.
It's like they say, it's not the mountain we conquer, but ourselves.
Well said.
Well said.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap up? What's the one thing you want them to remember about DoorDash?
I want them to remember that, DoorDash is more than just a food delivery app.
Mm-hmm.
They're a company that's constantly evolving,
Mm-hmm.
innovating,
Mm-hmm.
and pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Right.
They're a company to watch,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to continue to play a major role in shaping the future of commerce.
Well said. DoorDash is a company on a mission,
Yeah.
and it's really exciting to see where they go from here. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into their world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to the Quarterly Call. For more episodes, please remember to rate and follow our show. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.